Hello, Deborah. Hello, Kay. Looks like we've only got a few here tonight. Maybe we'll be joined by others a little later. In the meantime, the ball's in your court. This is Q&A night. So what would you like to know? And how did you like the progressive short takes this week? Hmm. Here I am. I know I watched one. Refresh my memory. Well, which one did you watch? Was it long or short? Well, thank you, Kay. There was one on public medicine. And another on a better design for Social Security going forward. I've done so many now, I've forgotten what I did last week. Did I do one on Alex Morse last week? 5 minutes and 58 seconds. I did only one short take that ran 20 minutes last week. That was pretty good. I did one on General Milley. General Milley says he'll be apolitical, but he needs to say more. He needs to say he's going to defend the Constitution. And if that takes troops, then so be it. I think I did one on is Joe Biden too stubborn to win the presidency? Okay. Hey, we got 18 shares. There's Rob. Hey, Rob, how are you? That was it. Which one? Stephanie says, sorry I'm late. Hi, guys. Well, thanks, Steph, for coming. Dolores is here. Hi, Dolores. Deborah said, short. And maybe it was the one about Joe Biden being too stubborn to become the president. Rob says, hey, Yoda. Hey, Rob. Avril says, hooty hoo, all fellow followers. Rob says, I'm doing all right. I'm glad to hear it. Let's see how much of a delay there is. I was bending over to look at your comments easily. And now I'm sitting up. Let's see how long the delay is until I start sitting up. Oops. Pretty long delay. So who do you think will win the election, Trump or Biden? Kay says, I saw you posted this in the People's Party tonight. Great idea. Yeah, I thought it was time that I shared to the People's Party, since I keep on boosting the People's Party all the time, right? I keep on mentioning the People's Party. So I figured it was time I shared it to the People's Party. Howard said that I shared 2 or 3 short takes. They were all good quality stuff. Well, thank you, Carmen. I appreciate that. I'm liking the short takes. I'm enjoying doing them. I still think it's going to be Biden. And the reason why I think it's going to be Biden is because, first, I don't think his cognitive decline is as bad as it looked when he was going, when he was in the middle of a debate action. I don't know if there was an adjustment of his medication that had to take place, okay, or what it was, but he seems much more like the older Joe Biden now. The older Joe Biden was really pretty good at debating other people, and he may still be very good in the one-on-one with Mike Pence, who's not much of a debater, as I recall. And Carmen says, yeah, Millie got some splaining to do. Yeah, I think he's got some splaining to do also. I think the Congress people seem to be pretty satisfied with his answer. I mean, I don't know why. If they really were satisfied with that answer, I don't think they're too bright. But, okay, Bob said, it's good for people who don't have the time to watch a full 2. Yep, I agree. That's why I started it. I knew I was missing a very big part of my potential market. And Rob says, HRS video, hours video. Oh, 2 hours video, I see. Kay says, I like the short takes, but like this discussion group better. I like this discussion group better, too. Okay, I like the interchange better also. I always have. Steve says, hi, Avril, thanks. And Carmen says, Biden does sound much sharper than in the past. Carmen says, my pleasure. He does sound sharper than he did in the spring of this year. So maybe it was just an adjustment to the medication, they were giving him. When people get older, this goes wrong, that goes wrong. A few things go wrong. And, it often is physical, really, more than psychological, or anything like that. So if there's an adjustment in diet or there's an adjustment in something else, but it seems like more of his faculties are all there. And certainly, I don't see him as noticeably less sharp than Trump, who's rambling all over the place with this and that, the other thing. So there's that. And then also there's the fact that in response to the conventions, there wasn't much of a poll bump, if any poll bump, for Trump. And Trump, of course, is in the position where he needs poll bumps because he's trailing outside of the margin of error right now. And of course, the economy is still against him, and the fatalities from COVID are still against him. Kay says, I wonder if back in the primary, Joe really didn't want to run. Obama talked him into it, I think. Well, the story, of course, is that his son wanted him to run before his son actually died. And so I think that's what was going on there. But I don't think Joe really relished the back and forth between himself and the other Democratic candidates. I don't think that kind of back and forth with multiple people is really his style. He's better when he's by himself, or he's better when he's in interaction with one other person. And I think that's what happened there. I think now that he's the selection of the party, and he has the whole party behind him, and he can focus on Trump, he's much more confident of what he's doing. Also, it's hard for Trump to attack Biden in the same way some of the other Democrat candidates could, because he often has to attack Biden on things he himself is guilty of, and Biden knows that, and he'll immediately fire back. He's quite well aware, I think, of the weak points of Donald Trump and quite prepared to fire back, against him. So, but one other reason why I think he's going to win is the fatalities thing is really inexorable. It's just inexorable. The deaths per million now in the United States, I gotta get this, gotta refresh the page here. I mean, it's already way up there, even just the last few days or so. It's gone way, way up. It's 582 now. 582 deaths per million here in the United States. Now, we were passed by Brazil, who's now at 593. They've been moving awfully, awfully fast. But we passed by Sweden now. We're at 582. Sweden's at 577. And our people our fatalities are still considerable. There were 707 reported yesterday, 707 additional fatalities yesterday. And that report, I don't believe, is complete. Yeah, okay, it was 707 yesterday. That brought us up to 582. We're now very close to Italy at 588. We'll probably pass Italy on Monday. It's even possible tomorrow, but most probably on Monday we'll pass Italy. However, Brazil and Chile are moving faster than we are, or just as fast anyway. So we're not going to pass them on Monday. But we're beginning to approach the death levels, the fatality rates of the UK. Okay, the UK is at 611 right now, and we're closing in on them. We're 29 away. And then after that, it's Spain, fairly close by at 629 also. So Chile, Brazil, and ourselves are beginning to challenge the worst of the European nations. The only one currently out of reach for us right now is Belgium at 854. But then it's all countries from the Americas. And Peru has just gone crazy past everybody. They're 898 now. Okay, of nations with sizable populations, they're 898 per million. They're way, way out in front. So, to come back, what's going on here is that we're going to have many more fatalities. The group, by doing projections at the University of Washington, the Institute for Health Metrics, I believe, is the name of the institute. They've been working with a particular model. They're now saying that by the end of the year, we will have 410,000 fatalities, which puts our fatalities by election time at roughly between 240 and 250,000. So in the closing days before the election, Trump is going to have to cope with that. And of course, schools are opening now. We're having spikes once again. As the spikes occur, as the number of cases go up, we as a society are going to have to cope with that. And we, of course, will try to slow things down in various ways, which in turn is going to present further problems for the economy. There's no political help right now. The White House is doing a terrible job of leading the Senate and the House into some kind of deal. And I think this is hurtful to Trump. I mean, Trump can try to blame the Democrats, but I really don't think that's going to work. Because, of course, there's plenty of blame to go around. Plenty of blame to go around. So I think it's still looking very bad for Trump, and that it may start to get worse again for him. It started to level off for him, and it has leveled off now for a little while, for 2 weeks anyway, maybe 3 weeks. But I think it's going to start going down again for him, and Biden's going to open up a bigger lead. Now, this depends on what they do, of course, depends on what Biden does. If he focuses on the economy, and if he focuses on COVID and Trump's terrible failure with COVID, especially if he puts it all in a comparative politics perspective, looking at it cross-nationally, okay, and how other countries have done, I think the American people are still largely ignorant about what's been going on in those nations that have handled this well. If the message is hammered home that some nations have done very well with this, and you name 10 other nations that are doing smashingly well and ask the question, why couldn't we do this? Why was it so hard for us to do this? Why are we in this terrible position? And the obvious answer is leadership, lack of coordination among our various leaders across all the states. And who's responsible for that? Who's in the position capable of creating coordination, creating a national effort against this? And who has failed to create that national effort? It's Trump. It's Trump's failure all the way. If Biden keeps hammering home on that message and lays the whole thing at Trump's doorstep, I think the lead's going to go up. And Matt says, what is the Biden campaign strategy? I don't know if he has a campaign strategy except to adapt. But insofar as it has one, I think he is trying to get people to focus on the big issues and to not allow the chaos that Trump is trying to create to divert attention away from what the big issues are. So Matt says, what is the Biden campaign strategy? Are they trying to win the center and take Republicans and center-leaning independents? Well, they have been trying to do that. They've been trying to take people who are disillusioned Republicans and people who are centrists, but maybe, are independent. I don't know if they're assuming the progressives will vote blue no matter who. I think what they're probably assuming is that at worst, what we progressives will do is stay home or vote for a third party, but we're not going to vote for Trump. And they seem to have made the calculation that if they get the centrists and they get those Republicans who are very, very disillusioned with Trump, that will be a majority big enough for a convincing win. Carmen says, I think his dying son talked him into it, and I'm sure Obama surely did not object. Well, not in the end. He didn't seem enthusiastic at the beginning. He seemed to want to put in somebody centrist, but younger. Harris was probably his favorite. After Harris, it was probably Buttigieg. But of course, they failed Obama. They weren't able to hang in there. Obama did not want Warren. He didn't want her. She was too progressive. So who was he left with in the end? He was left with Biden. Rob said, what are your opinions on Jamal's perspectives when it comes to the Democrat Party regarding if Biden wins, then the progressive wing will become even more relevant and the Democratic Party will become even more right-wing? I think a lot depends on the down-ballot races. I'm not sure I agree with Jamal on that. If we progressives do well in the down-ballot races, in other words, there's a good side to us not being enthusiastic about Joe Biden. And that good side is we turn to progressive candidates and we provide our money and we provide our active support to those progressive candidates. That gives them a better chance to win in the down-ballot races. And if we get a larger progressive wing in Congress, all pushing legislation, that will be hard for Biden to ignore because he needs to have a Congress that's with him. So I think that's important. And Joanne says that. Joanne says, need to support Oh, the progressives down ballot. And Stephanie says, finally done sharing. I am in way too many groups. I know, Steph. Rick says, evening cooking dinner. I did that earlier. Matt says, does anyone see any Biden energy anywhere in the country? I see absolutely nothing right now. No, I don't see any Biden energy. But I do see a lot of anti-Trump energy. Carmen says, well, Joe B., just a ton of new ammo since the no disabled vets issue that Trumple thin skin has supposedly said. Well, thank you, honey. So, yeah, there's a ton of new ammo, but I think that's a distraction. I think that Trump just threw in another distraction. He knew he'd get a reaction. Just give the dog some red meat to get him salivating. So he knew all the mass media would salivate over this and go, oh, isn't Trump horrible? He doesn't love the vets. He's insulting to the vets. What a swine. What a low swine. Well, I do think it's important to be respectful of those who volunteered and who fought for the country. But at the same time, I think this election, if Biden's going to win, if he's going to get Trump's people to stay home, this has got to be about COVID and the economy. It's got to be about all the deaths. I mean, the message has to get through to people. We didn't need to lose 250,000 Americans to this disease. That was Trump's choice. We have to get over that message. Kay says, I heard he is losing in Ohio via Tim Ryan, K on MSN. He may be losing in Ohio. Carmen says, nada. Stacy says, no, just resignedness. Kay says, hi, Evelina. Stephanie says, this pandemic has hurt Trump badly. The bad thing is nobody is taking this pandemic seriously anymore. It's scary. Matt says, who is better at election fraud, the Democrats or the Republicans? Well, the Republicans are better at vote suppression. Who's better at actually manipulating the machines? That varies state by state. Stephanie says, Matthew Arado, Dems hand down. I wouldn't be too sure about that, Steph. Kay says, good question, Matthew. Stephen DeVore says, at this point, I rolled this too soon. And Steve DeVore says, at this point, could anybody outside this administration start to bring the COVID-45, COVID-19 numbers down? Well, I think we have to get rid of this administration to bring them down. I mean, you're not going to bring the COVID numbers down if you don't have the federal government trying to organize the various states into a coherent effort against COVID. If you're asking whether the Biden administration can do a better job of bringing it under control, yes, I think they can. They would put coordination in the hands of Ron Klain, and he would do a far better job. We know the kind of job he would do because he was handling the Ebola crisis for the Obama-Biden administration. And he did an excellent job there. Stephanie says sending kids back to school is just ridiculous. And Matt says, Stephanie, you sound very convinced. They certainly put on a good show during the primaries. And Carmen says, flu season starts this month. More deaths from that coming up under the fascist fruitcake. Yeah, I'm due to take a flu shot on the 11th now. It was originally scheduled for the 2nd, but my car wasn't working. I couldn't get over there. I had to cancel it. Car's working again now. Steve says, that's supposed to be COVID-19 numbers down, laugh my ass off. And Matt and Stephanie says, Matt, I am very convinced, laugh out loud. Steph says we won't listen. Carmen says, Adolf Hitler has a lot of nerve intending to cut funding to democratic cities. He's a propaganda putz. I'd say he's just a putz all around. He's an all-around putz. Steve says, Biden needs to play Trump cleanly and keep pointing out how un-American he is. I think he's got to focus again on the issues. And it would help greatly if he wasn't too stubborn to come out for Medicare for All and the Green New Deal. Okay, says Biden has been doing well on his trip to Kenosha. Seems so. Stephanie says, Kamala scares me. Yeah, I know, she's a meanie. She is a meanie. Steve says, me too. But we really need to remove Trump. Matt says, did anyone know what Nick Brown is doing at the People's Party? Why start new? Why not try to leverage the organization of the Green Party? What is the strategy there? Okay, he cannot leverage the organization of the Green Party because the Green Party has been organized now for some time, and they have people who have been active in the Green Party for years and years and years that have put their stamp on the party and the direction of that party. Now, Nick would be welcome to join the party, but he could not shape it according to his views. He would not be able to produce the kind of messaging that he has produced for the People's Party if he were inside the Green Party trying to do the same thing. There are too many other cooks inside of the Green Party. And I'm pretty sure they would spoil the broth. Carmen says 400,000 watched the People's Party convention. And he says Democrats cannot win without the progressives. Stephanie says, Steve DeVore, I know. Rob Rivera says, did you hear the New York Times reported that the EPA will now be easing the restrictions on coal burning waste, which will basically lead them to, quote, save millions, but now don't have to worry about the lead, arsenic, and other metals that are dangerous and can lead to many public health risks, all in the name of saving coal jobs. Instead of proposing a just transition for coal workers and push safe, renewable energy, he decides to further destroy the environment and put the public health risk for, and it stops there. Stephanie says the Dems have a lot of money here in Arkansas, but being a red state, I feel the hate Twinkie will win my state, sadly. Carmen says, hi, bodacious Bonnie. Hey, Bonnie, did you hear that? And Steve DeVore says, where people like me counted, I watched what I wanted on YouTube. You're correct. If progressives don't show up for Biden, the country's in trouble. And Matt says, Rob, I heard that back in the spring. Oh, Bonnie says, yeah, she heard it. Rob says, I heard that back in the spring where the EPA was relaxing restrictions to basically let the polluters police themselves as they see fit. Typical Republican move. And then Dion Adams says, progressives are not voting for Biden, regressives are. Steve says, hate Twinkie, El Mayo. And Carmen says, I sure don't plan to. Dion says, don't know if leaders of the opposition party are endorsing you. Maybe you're in the wrong party. Yeah, like Rick Snyder, the poisoner of Flint, is endorsing Joe Biden. And maybe he thinks Joe Biden is never going to arrest him. And Stephanie says, Stephen DeVore, Twinkie, laugh out loud. Yeah, I guess Twinkies are orange, aren't they? Rick says, Green Party has way too much baggage. And you know, Rick, I've heard a lot of people say that. Okay, I haven't paid a lot of attention to the Green Party till the last 2 or 3 years. Could you be more specific about what that baggage is? And Rick says, the Democrats made a decision that they'd rather have Republican voters than progressives. Yes, they don't like us. They don't like us. They used to call us the DFHs. They don't like us. And Dion says, Trump's going to win Michigan. Think so? Well, again, according to the polls, as they were in 2016, of course, Biden's way ahead in Michigan. He's ahead by 10 points, according to the polls there. I honestly don't think he's going to catch up, in Michigan. In case you haven't noticed, he hasn't run a very pro-labor administration. So I don't think the working class voters I don't think they have the same attitudes towards him they had in 2016. George Kamani says, Trump 2020, it don't take a genius to see it. And Arrow says, Dr. Joe, can you tell me how I can get my hands on one of those platinum coins you mentioned on the SS funding redo? I checked in my couch cushion, but nothing doing. Well, you can probably get a hold of a platinum coin, Arrow. They are making some 1 ounce platinum coins. Of course, they're very low denomination coins. I forget what they are, $1,000 or $2,000 a coin. They're collector items at this point. So you might be able to get your hands on those if you can find the money. There are no $1 trillion platinum coins in existence, no $100 trillion platinum coins in existence, because the Secretary of the Treasury has not seen fit to get the mint to produce them. Carmen says, in the Social Security short take that you featured last week, I meant. Well, those, of course, have never been done by the Mint yet, Carmen. Steve says, the Clintons moved the party further to the right. Not just the Clintons, the Obamas. The Obamas were instrumental. The Obama-Biden administration was instrumental in moving it even further to the right. Nancy Pelosi has been instrumental with her Pecosi shit. Stephanie says, the Grope tornado most likely will win Arkansas. I really do not want to vote for Biden, but I cannot vote for Trump either. I'm freaking stuffed. Well, a vote for Biden doesn't mean you like Biden. But of course, you could always not vote for the president and vote down ballot and vote for people you do like. Greg Letzi says, if progressives don't show up for Biden, the country is in trouble. So who wants to put the country in trouble? If you do, raise your hands. Well, Greg, I think either way the country is in trouble. Or if nothing happened, the country would still be in trouble. The question is, are you interested in putting the country into greater trouble or lesser trouble? I think at this point it's probably a reasonable calculation that if Biden wins, we're probably not in as much trouble. But we're on the brink of failure when it comes to managing climate change in time to do any good. And we've just wasted 4 years with Trump, and before that, of course, the Obama and Biden administration wasted 8 years. So we're just wasting all the time we have left. Will a new Biden administration waste further time? I hope not. But I'm not sure. I don't see the Democrats taking any steps to try to lessen the influence that the fossil fuel industry has on the party, on either or both parties. Rick Maynard says specifically there has been, throughout their history, dating back to when there were two Green parties, of them not treating their candidates democratically. Okay, another word for unfairly. Oh, you mean what they did was to select a small group at the top, went out of their way to select people, and they didn't use a bottom-up kind of process to select their candidates. Is that what you're saying, Rick? That that's the baggage they have, that they have an elitist baggage in the party? And Carmen says you can always write in Bernie or whoever you like if you prefer. Carmen says, did you guys see that Angela Green, QAnon not insinuating violence against the squad? I certainly did. He said, I was abhorred, but Facebook did take down the ad. Yeah, I mean, I think if she goes into Congress and starts talking that way, Congress will censor her and will kick her out. And maybe Rashida Tlaib will take when she sees her, will slug her. I'd love to see that. Sorry, my aggressive side is coming out. Dion says the country has been in trouble. Kay says, I'll take lesser trouble. Carmen says, you can always write in Bernie or whoever you like if you prefer. Stephanie says, Carmen, Arkansas doesn't have that option, unfortunately. Rick Maynard says, yes, exactly. Dion says, is there any evidence the Dem Party, okay, is Democratic? No, there's plenty of evidence it's undemocratic. On the other hand, even though the Republican Party was more democratic in its primary, okay, than the Democrats were in their primary, I'm talking about in 2016, the more democratic of the two parties is the one that ended up with Donald Trump. If they weren't so democratic in the Republican Party, they probably would have ended up with Jeb Bush. And Carmen says, Stephanie Smith Udy, oh, sorry, I forget that some states don't have the right in option. Rick Maynard says, there was quite the battle royale, even in regards to Howie. Yeah, there was a fight with regards to Howie. Stephanie says, Carmen, it's okay. Arkansas is so backward. It's sad. Steve says, what would it take to make ranked choice voting for national candidates the law of the land and get rid of the Electoral College? Make our voting democratic. Well, I think you could pass a law to that effect. Oh, I see. I think the ranked choice voting part of it, I think you can pass a law that might work there. But to get rid of the Electoral College, specifically, you have to pass a constitutional amendment. Now, there is a proposal afoot for a majority of states to agree that they will cast their particular electoral votes for the person who wins the popular vote. And if enough states were to agree to do that, it would have a similar effect to getting rid of the Electoral College. I'm taking it out of the Constitution. But if you really want to get rid of it by taking it out of the Constitution, then you need to pass an amendment. And Rick says, I'm certainly not making that argument. Carmen says, I wouldn't mind Rashida slugging the worthless pool pillow drool. That's quite an epithet, Carmen. Pool pillow drool. I don't think I've ever heard that one before. Steve DeVore says, that is on the Movement for a People's Party platform. Actually, Kay says, Steve DeVore, that is on the Movement for a People's Party platform. Yes, I guess it is. Rick Maynard says, why do ranked choice when you can do something better? And Rick gives a link to Star Voting US. I'm not sure what the suggestion is on there, but I'll be happy to look it up afterwards. Okay, any more questions, folks? The last comment I have is from Rick Maynard. Rick says, "'Twas a pleasure, all. Thank you, Joe." Well, I'm not ready to say goodnight yet. If you're ready to say goodnight, that's all right, but I'm here to take more questions. Rick says, Avril says, the Sunrise Movement is featuring a nice collection of Green New Deal posters for $24.99. I love to get it, but my ends don't allow for any purchases right now. But if you're in the position to support them, you might want to consider it. Also, don't forget Dr. J's Patreon account. Thank you. I haven't mentioned my Patreon account yet tonight, so I guess I will flash my promo once, which has my Patreon account up on it. Patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. So thank you for mentioning it. Carmen, I appreciate that. And Steve DeVore says, good night, thank you. And Rick says, 'twas a pleasure, thank you. Joe, Matt says, did you see that story of Northeastern suspending 11 students for breaking social distancing? No, I didn't see that story, but I'm glad they did. I'm very glad they did. We need examples. We need examples, I think, especially in schools, because they are endangering themselves and other people as well. And Rick says, without a refund for classes. And Kay says, Bernie had some live streams today saying that Biden has agreed to expand Medicare to cover dental, eyes, and hearing. Well, that's good, but that's a minor thing. He's also said that he favors lowering the Medicare age to 60. That's going to help some also. But I don't think that's enough to get people excited. If he wants to bring the progressives to the table or to the voting booth, he has to go for Medicare for all. He's got to quit screwing around. He's got to quit trying to save the insurance industry, the health insurance industry. He can put in a transition period like Bernie did. That will probably get people to the polls. I mean, Bernie had a freaking 4-year transition. He has it in his bill. That's very, very reasonable. But let's face it, folks, that private health insurance industry has to go. It has been murdering people by spreadsheet for years and years and years now. That's the way it is. That's the way things are. Rick says they all got caught staying in the same hotel room. Carmen says, were they social distancing? Carmen says, it's hard to have questions about short take because you always lay out the explanation so precisely. When is the next one? And what was the topic of the last few segments? What was the topic of the last few segments? Well, hang on a second. Okay, recently I did a short take on property damage versus harming people. Are they equally serious? I also did a short take on General Milley and his statements about wanting an apolitical military, saying I will not follow an unlawful order. which is nice, but the real question is, will he stand up for the Constitution and stop those who are following unlawful orders? I did a short take on reconsidering the ABC Act, on the stubbornness of Joe Biden, asking, is Biden too stubborn to win the presidency? I did a short take on the need to return to public medicine in this country, and a short take on the importance of electing Alex Morse, which was a futile short take. A short take on funding Social Security going forward. So those were the most recent short takes. Now, what are short takes that I'm planning now? I am planning a short take on the Cuban doctors. I'm also planning one on the possibility that the decider of the 2020 elections may be Justice John Roberts. A short take on the eviction moratorium that just was put out by the administration. I may be doing a short take on debating vote by mail versus voting in person. So those are ones I'm planning now, but I suspect that I will have 3 or 4 other topics for you on Monday, which is the day when I work on my short takes. So those are some of the short takes that I'm planning. And Matt says, how heavy are schools pushing to get kids back in class? If they did go to completely online classes, could they justify full tuition without any room and board? I don't know whether it's a question of justification. It's a question of whether the people will pay, isn't it? So I don't think much of their justifications. The question is, how badly do people want to go to that particular school and to get a degree from that particular school? And the other question is, how well can the people who want to go badly afford to do what they want to do? Deborah says, Biden doesn't say this stuff. Okay. Kay says, I know, and he should. Carmen says, South Dakota is allowing their state fair after the super spreader Sturgis event. You can't make this inconsiderate, murderous greed up. I know. Carmen says, private health insurance, the real death panels. Yeah, they've been real death panels for years. Carmen says, oh, I got to watch that short take. I missed that one. Which one? Rick says, here in New Hampshire, it's hybrid, but once tested and cleared on campus, they must stay, or when they come back, 2 weeks quarantine and clear testing again. That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, so in New Hampshire, they're having kids come back, and then they're having to quarantine for 14 days first, and then they're tested, and then if they're clear, it's okay, right? But if they leave, then when they come back, yeah, it makes sense. That is the way to contain it. So, Joe, do you see any difference in policy between the Green Party platform and the People's Party? In either, is there any chance of a more progressive approach to public finance like MMT? I think there's a greater chance in the movement for a People's Party than there is in the Green Party. Uh, the People's Party talks about both the basic income and the job guarantee. And the People's Party people have had contacts with the MMTers in the past, including some minor contacts with me. I mean, I'm Facebook friends with the Branas. And in the Unity, there was a progressive Unity conference a few years back in 2017. It was organized by Nick Brana, and Arakel Bloss. And Steve Grumbine and I were there presenting. So we had a small role in that particular conference. And there were more contacts between Steve and Nick and interviews back and forth. And so Nick is pretty well aware of the MMT position. Now, right now, he seems to be closer to Scott Santenz in the UBI position than he is to ourselves. But that may possibly change. I think the variable there has been that Bernie hasn't pushed MMT much. He's pushed his programs, but he's gone out of his way not to take on any of the MMT views on when he's verbalizing public financing. He still sounds like a tax and spend kind of progressive, especially with his heavy emphasis on wealth taxes. So he hasn't wanted to take on the job of educating people concerning the MMT point of view. If Stephanie Kelton's book is successful enough, maybe people will change their minds about that. Kay says, are U.S. people also locked out of Cuba now? Laugh out loud. We are locked into the U.S. now, I think. Yes. Yes, people want us to quarantine. If we travel there, they want us to quarantine 14 days before they let us in. Carmen says, California's enlisting the medical help of Cuba. I just got to find the article again. My Wi-Fi dropped. Matt says, please comment on where you see the MMT movement going. Is it organized enough? Who are the key people who are going to carry the cause in the coming decades? Look into your crystal ball and let me know what you see. Well, there are a lot of young MMTers at this point who have been coming out of the MMT schools. There are more schools teaching MMT now than there have ever been before. Okay. There's a movement for MMT, in the UK. There are movements, in Europe. It's not just in Kansas City any longer. It's not just in Australia any longer. It's really an international movement now. And there are many young people to carry it forward. There are many people who have gotten recent PhDs or who are getting PhDs now. Uh, I'd say there are probably 50 young people now who are ready to carry it forward. Okay, at this point, or getting ready to carry it forward in their, like third or fourth year, okay, graduate school. It's a strong movement. It will be mainstreamed in relatively short order. In Biden's administration, Jared Bernstein is going to be an important economist. He used to be the chief economist before Joe Biden. I think he's going to advise Biden to get Stephanie Kelton into the administration in the National Economics Council. I don't know how central she'll be to the council, but I'm pretty sure Jared wants to work with her, wants her perspective, and that he's likely to bring her on board. And Bernie would like that. So that's an easy way for Biden to please Bernie. Derek Hamilton is sounding more and more like an MMTer in his views. Of course, his own views on the job guarantee are very close to Pavlina's. So, anyway, Pavlina will be carrying on the movement. She is still relatively young. Stephanie, of course, is still, was relatively young. Scott Fulweiler is young. I believe Scott is in his early to middle 40s. And Fadl Kaboub, very, very strong. Very, very strong in pushing MMT and communicating it in common sense terms and in the context of the developing world, but also in the context of the United States as well. My own acting vice president in the Center for the Public Purpose, whose name is Andres Bernal. He is an extremely bright person with a sociological background. He's coming out of the New School for Social Research. And Stephanie Kelton is sitting on his PhD committee, even though she's at Stony Brook. She's a product of the New School herself, and she has a teaching appointment there, as well. And Andres has been doing his PhD with her, and he's going to come out. In fact, he is right now a very strong MMTer. There's Rowan Gray, who is very strong. Okay, also Nathan Tankus, who's very, very good, but who's not going for a formal PhD quite yet, I don't think, but who's writing brilliantly. There are many people ready to carry the ball forward. There are journalists now who are very strong in MMT. Jeff Spross, for example, is one. Kate Aronoff is another. I think that Zach Carter also knows a lot of MMT right now. And Ryan Grimm, okay, and David Dayen have basic understandings, okay, of MMT as well. I think MMT is stronger than it's ever been among journalists and opinion writers. I think Matt Stoller knows a lot of MMT. He got taught by Stephanie when she was in Washington. They both were on Bernie's staff, and I believe they were sitting next to each other. And Rick says, yes, 2 weeks first, regardless, hybrid to keep class size down. Dion says, MMT glosses people's eyes. Yes, that's true, but so does any economics. I don't think that MMT glosses people's eyes any more than any other school of economics does, and maybe less. In fact, if people don't have much background in economics to start with, and they approach MMT, sometimes it's a lot easier for them to understand. Laura says, meaning that folks go to sleep. Okay, and Deanne says, what I mean is most people have no clue. And Alvaro says, that's why we keep advocating as much as possible. And Kay says, I saw an interview with the woman who heads the Airline Workers Union, Sarah Nelson, and she had the Deficit Myth book on her bookshelf, the right behind her. Yeah, Sarah's a smart cookie. She is a smart cookie. And I'm sure she and Stephanie are very friendly. And Avril says, surprisingly, Italy has a substantial MMT following. Not so surprisingly, there was a journalist over there by the name of Paolo. What was Paolo's last name? I forget now, but this was like along about 2011, 2012. He got very enthusiastic, okay, over MMT. And he arranged a big MMT affair, which was in an arena they had, okay, in Rimini, Italy. They had something like 2,500 people there. And the MMT people were getting treated like rock stars. Stephanie Kelton, Michael Hudson, also Bill Black. There was a Frenchman there, strictly speaking, wasn't, okay, an MMT person, but friendly. And I know I'm forgetting somebody else. But anyway, they brought down the house. They brought down the house at that particular conference. Okay, it was a couple of day conference. The place was packed. It was packed. And the videos are available online, and you can see how excited people were. And then there were 2 tours, okay, of Italy that Paolo got arranged. He was the advance man for the tours. He arranged a couple of tours for Warren Mosler to travel all over Italy. And Paolo was booking Warren for talks and discussions all over Italy. And Warren, of course, made a terrific impression over there. You know how casual Warren is when he talks. He's so at ease, and he really does a great job. And he did it in Italy. He did a great job in Italy. And anyway, those appearances and those trips of Warren's built a following in Italy. It's a substantial following. And they have groups in Italy, social media groups, that are devoted, okay, to MMT. And these groups are very interested in getting the monetary sovereignty of Italy back because they know the key to this all is monetary sovereignty. Dion says, pro MMT, by the way. Avril says, what a scrumptious ill morsel of hope. Deborah says, each one teach one. Okay. Avril says, thank you for your service. Avril says, yeah, Rowan Gray is a beast when it comes to knowledge. Yeah, Rowan's great. No question. So is Nathan. They're both great. Kay says, I think Ali Velci is learning the MMT way too. Yeah, Ali Velci's a pretty smart guy also. Won't take him long to learn. And Deborah says, Jamarl, well, I wouldn't say Jamarl's a convert. I'd say he's friendly, but I don't think he's internalized the MMT way of looking at things. He knows some of the basics, though. He's talked to me at length on at least at length for three occasions. On at least three occasions. When I say at length, I mean we have 4-hour conversations. Jamarl and I. They were very detailed conversations. And he's had a few lengthy conversations with Steve Grumbine, as well. I don't think he's been able to get Stephanie on his show yet. Matt says, can you comment on the history of socialism in the United States? Do you think there's any chance we should see a resurgence of socialism in the coming years? Is there a Debs or a Foster on the horizon? Well, okay, I think it all depends on what you mean by socialism. Okay, I think there are a lot of people who've come out of the Bernie movement who consider themselves to be democratic socialists. Now, what do they mean by democratic socialism? I don't think they share the traditional meaning of that wing of socialism, which was for nationalizing the means of actually producing things. They're not really wrapped up in that kind of socialism. On the other hand, when they say democratic socialism, I think they mean things like building a huge cooperative sector in the United States, like democratizing large corporations so that they're much more under the control of the stockholders, and so that the workers in those corporations have a much bigger say in how the corporations are run. I think they're very much in favor of a much expanded welfare state and very much in favor of creating greater equality in the country by whatever means, as long as the means happen to be democratic. I think when they say democratic, they're not just talking voting, they're talking about democratizing all of our collective activities, and efforts. And essentially growing our collective networks so that they are bottom up, so that they are truly bottom up. So if you think socialism is democracy in the workplace, if you think that's a big part, of socialism, democracy in the workplace, then these people are socialists. And who are these people? Well, some of them are very visible right now. I think that AOC believes in this. I think the rest of the squad believes in this. I'm not sure about Presley, but I certainly think that Cori Bush believes in this. Okay, I think maybe Jayapal believes in it. I mean, I think we've got people in Congress who believe in this kind of socialism. And that when we see a Green New Deal, we're going to see a lot more of this kind of socialism. So I think it depends on what you mean by socialism. I don't think socialism in the United States is going to be in any way the Marxist and Leninist type, okay, of socialism. It may look back to the humanist Marx, to the Marx that was opposed to and aware of alienation and the meaning, okay, of alienation. It's much more the kind of socialist that Rick Wolff is. What I expect to see in the future in terms of development of socialism, okay, in the United States, is kind of a fusion of Rick Wolff's type of socialism with the more macro doctrines, okay, of MMT. And that may be the kind of socialism that we see developing here in the United States. I think there has to become a socialist aspect to our foreign policy, one that looks upon regimes like the Maduro regime, okay, in Venezuela, with a certain degree, okay, of sympathy. In other words, while acknowledging that there may be some authoritarian aspects to such a regime, we might also acknowledge that there are many authoritarian aspects of government here in the United States too. And there may be a recognition that we have to start taking attitudes in foreign policy that are not so holier than thou when we have our own place to clear up, to clean up. And then also recognize the achievements, okay, of other nations. For example, the achievements, okay, of Venezuela in the favelas there, and the organizations of the local communities into really functioning organization where people take care of one another. Those are tremendous achievements by the Venezuelans in the context of the Chavez regime and now the Maduro regime, which is continuing that work. We have to begin to recognize those kinds of achievements and the achievements of Cuba in spite of the economic sanctions and our own opposition and how difficult it's been for them. They have had really major achievements in many, many areas, including life expectancy, which is now equivalent to our own. We have to start looking at those things realistically, without the kinds of biases we've been bringing to the table. Avril says, when the masses finally get a true whiff of MMT, do you think they'll all want to stop paying federal taxes? Not when they get a true whiff, okay, of MMT. In other words, they'll realize then that taxes are necessary to drive the value of the currency. Now, I do think that they will also think it's important to tax people who are wealthier their fair share, because not for the revenue. The revenue gained is not important. What's important is that extremely rich people don't have enough money left over to undermine our democracy. We have to break up the big fortunes. Those are a danger to democracy as long as they exist. I subscribe to the idea that we should have no billionaires. Basically, billionaires should be outlawed. Matt says, no, Carmen. The masses are such a glutton for punishment. We will happily pay taxes to prevent inflation while the government spends lavishly on Wall Street and big business. Avro says, fantastic background about it, MMT in Italy. Thanks bunches. Carmen, there's more background about MMT, in Italy, in Warren's book, The Seven Deadly Innocent Frauds. If you go back to that book and read it, look up the anecdote about the interaction of Warren and a colleague of his with one Professor Luigi Spaventa, who was high up in the government during the early 90s, when Italy was about to default on its currency. And the historic meeting of Warren and his colleague with Spaventa, and the actions it led to by the Italian government, which saved a default, and by the way, made Warren $300 million in trade, in currency trade. Kay says, there was an interesting piece on the Saturday Jacobin show today about how so-called social programs are designed to keep people poor. Happened to me. Kicked off for the Medicaid program in the middle of the pandemic. Yes. And Rick says, 36th Annual Bread and Roses Heritage Festival. Facebook events. Rick says, Labor Day event. The strike that shook America. Take a look back at the landmark victory for American workers in 1912 Bread and Roses strike. Kay says, love Professor Wolf. I like Rick Wolf too. I do. I wouldn't say he's very well liked by the MMTers, though, because I think they think, he's too insular into his thing, and he doesn't consider enough the macroeconomic effects. I don't really have any opinion about that. I mean, it seems to me that he's focusing on what he thinks is vital, and workplace democracy is really, really, really vital. It's really something we need to have very, very badly. If we're going to be a true democracy, we can't be basically having democracy at the ballot box, and monarchy, or oligarchy in the places that we spend 8 hours of our day every day. That undercuts a democracy socialization. We need democracy in the workplace very, very badly. Now, the MMTers, are macroeconomists, so they don't think about democracy in the workplace much. And I don't see that Rick Wolf's work is in conflict with MMT, at all. I think a synthesis of these things would be very, very useful. And by the way, I think, that Andres Bernal is in a very, very good position to create such a synthesis, because he studied with Rick Wolf. And he studied with Stephanie Kelton, too. I don't know if he's the only one to study with both of them. But he understands both of them. He's in a good position to create that synthesis. Alvaro says, oh snap, weren't there supposed to be mass protests today? I totally overlooked today's date. Also haven't seen anything in the news. Alvaro says, well, ever see status quo's flag? Stars are replaced with corporate logos and hung upside down. Yeah, that's very clever. Kay says, why what, Alvaro? Deborah says, oh yeah. Alvaro says, why do you love Wolf? Because he's taught me a lot about the economy for many years now, Kay says. And Carmen says, Tyler Perry just became a billionaire. I can't say I'm against it in this case. Sorry if that makes me a hypocrite. Look, Carmen, if someone's got $1 billion. They have too much money available to influence elections. That's the problem. I don't care who it is. We can't have billionaires. They're a threat to democracy. Now, I'm grateful for any billionaires who want to help to end the existence, of billionaires. But I think all the billionaires should be for that. They should know that they are a danger to democracy in principle. And Deborah said, I just listened to Wolf and Hedges today from a year ago. So good. Yep. And Matt says, agree about workplace democracy, but we're hundreds of miles away from democracy at the ballot box. Well, I agree with that, Matt. We are. Hundreds of miles away and seemingly getting further and further away. Not closer and closer, further and further away. I mean, both parties have been undermining democracy. And how have they been undermining democracy? Because that's what their donors have wanted. They've been undermining democracy by taking what the billionaires have to offer and then using it to do things like suppress the vote and rig the machines. Okay. Any more comments or questions? Thanks for your questions, Matt. I think they've led to good exchanges. Any other questions? Okay, then I am going to, unless I see some more in the next few seconds, I am going to say goodnight now. Oops. There's Carmen. Bernie issued something about how Donald Trump is laying out the groundwork to rig the election. Yes, I know. I mean, it's obvious. We've all been watching that. We've been watching it happen. Now, whether it'll be successful or not, is another question. He's been doing it with the post office. He's been doing it with other Republicans in terms of the voter suppression stuff. I'm sure he's got his own teams of people out there who are trying to rig it in terms of, fixing the machine. He's also trying to rig it by having an army of poll watchers at the polls whose job it will be to try to frighten people into not voting. And Matt says, do you think Trump will go scorched earth? Yes. I think he will go scorched earth, and that to stop him, we're going to have to go scorched earth too. We're going to have to give as good as we get. Alvaro says, what did you guys do for your anniversary? Well, it was hard for us to do things because, of course, it's hard to do the usual things one does for one's anniversary, which is to go out. But what we did is we celebrated by staying together here and by making what we consider a fantastic dinner, which is a dinner, okay, of mussels. We went to Costco and we bought I guess it was 5.5 pounds, okay, of mussels. They're fairly inexpensive, okay, at Costco. I think they're $2.10 a pound or something like that. So we bought the mussels, okay, and I cook them in. First, I make a saffron cream sauce, and then I cook them in the saffron cream sauce. We're not allowed to have cream, so what we use is the coconut cream instead, which we are allowed to have. And that saffron cream sauce turned out great. It turned out fantastic. And while we're not supposed to eat the kind of bread that French bread is, we made an exception in this case, okay, because it was our anniversary. And we bought 2 loaves, okay, of French bread, one for the first night and one for the second night. And then we also bought some sparkling wine. And we had 2 very wonderful dinners. And we also had very nice, quiet, but time together. And we really did have a wonderful time. And it hasn't ended yet. We're gonna. We enjoyed our mussels for 2 days, and then for dinner tonight, we had some pasta with the leftover mussel soup as our sauce, and that was very, very good. We finished our bubbly and then went back to some regular wine. We enjoyed that. And we talked a lot, and we heard some very good music. Mm-hmm. And we just spent some time together ourselves, which we always do anyway. And we had a wonderful time. Bonnie's sitting here now, and she's looking at me. Anyway, we had a great time.
Thank you for asking.
Oh, thank you for asking. Oh, by the way, our car, okay, is working again. It got working for our anniversary, on the day of our anniversary. And Kay says, Joe, can you make the short takes so we can discuss at the time of the post? Well, not really, because the discussions can get very, very long, and that defeats the purpose of the short takes, which is to do things and keep them short. In other words, I can do a short take of 10 or 15 minutes, but if then we're going to have a further live stream of 45 minutes to discuss the implications of the short take, then that sort of defeats the purpose, Kay, of doing a short take. But here's what we can do. Here's what we can do, Kay. If some of you will take the short takes, okay, a short take that you really like, and do a watch party with the short takes, and invite me to the watch party, then I can certainly join you in the watch party and be part of the discussion, and maybe a few of us can get together in the the watch party, and we can share the watch party, and we can have discussions about that. I mean, I'm game for that, because that would still leave us with the video that people who just want a short take can see, and we can have our discussions about the short takes in watch parties. In other words, I'm saying post the video and do a watch party on that video. And invite me to the watch party, and I'll participate, okay, along with the rest of you in a discussion. And we can start doing something like that, and that would be a very good time. And we could do it, a number of times per week. Deborah Wilson says good night. And Matt says, Avril, good question. Inquiring minds want to know what those lovebirds are doing. Kay says, Cohn says he would not be surprised if he would start a war to stay in office. Oh, I certainly would not be surprised. There's been a lot of speculation that he's planning an attack on Venezuela as one of his October surprises. He's got a lot of October surprises that he's lining up in order to divert attention in October from his poor performance on COVID and from the economy's poor performance. And one of the October surprises is supposed to be one more attempt to topple poor Maduro in Venezuela and to take over the regime there and turn the country over to the American companies run by his cronies to exploit. That's what Trump thinks is something a good president should do. Avril says, happy Saturday night. And Matt says, Joe, again, many thanks. It's not easy to field questions cold like this and speak intelligently for over an hour. Bravo. Thank you, Matt. I hope I spoke intelligently.
You did that for 4 hours.
Avril says, those mussels sound delicious. Saffron is expensive. Well, we had to restrict the recipe on the mussels just a little because we've been having some digestive problems of late. So specifically, what we had to do was to refrain from using garlic in the sauce, which is also, we normally do garlic and saffron with the cream. And that is indeed very delicious. I do want to say about saffron, saffron is expensive, but it's not as expensive as it used to be. In other words, but there was a period about 2007, 2006 where saffron went for maybe $25 an ounce, okay, at Costco. Then Costco quit carrying it because following the crash, saffron became very, very expensive. Very, very expensive. It was going for something like $110 an ounce. It was very, very expensive. And one couldn't afford, okay, to buy that quantity, okay, an ounce. It's important, okay, to buy an ounce, because when you buy an ounce, then you get enough saffron that you can make quite a few saffron dishes with it. In other words, I'm not sure how many exactly, but it gets down to the point where it's fairly inexpensive with each meal if you know how to marinate the saffron right, so you can get the flavor out of it while using just a small amount of it. So as I said, it was about $24 for 1 ounce at Costco back in like 2006, 2007. Then it went way, way up. Now the saffron has come down again, and last time we bought some, it cost about $37 or $38. And given the fact that there'd been some inflation since 2006, 2007, it's now 2020, it was really roughly the same price as it was in 2006, 2007 in constant dollars. Okay, so we were able to buy some for $37 or $38. It's lasted us for a very long time. I was checking just the other day. I think we've had that saffron now for 7 or 8 months because we use it only sparingly for special dishes. If we want to make, something like a paella or chicken saffron, or bouillabaisse or something like that. Bouillabaisse, yeah. Yeah, we still have enough saffron left, okay, for bouillabaisse. Okay, the problem with the bouillabaisse, though, is if we make it, we're eating it in too many days, and we're only allowed 2 meat meals per week. So
Yeah.
we've got a little problem with that. So saffron turns out not to be so expensive per meal if you buy it right and you use it right. Deborah says, awesome. Howard says, do you use white wine in the mussels? Yes, we usually use a dry white wine, okay, in the mussels. There's also something else I do, which I forgot to do this time. I'm afraid. It's still very good, but something else I do. Very often, okay, if you're cooking a bouillabaisse, Pernod is used, okay, in bouillabaisse. That's a French after dinner drink, okay, aperitif. Okay, is used just a dash in it. Okay, is used in the cooking. Okay, so I decided to do a variation of that and use Sambuca, okay, when I make a bouillabaisse, okay, which is an Italian after dinner drink that's made from fennel, okay, or anise, it's sometimes called. Okay, sometimes when I'm making the saffron cream sauce, as a final touch, I'll use a little bit, okay, of anise, and to kick that up some. Okay, and that does great. Okay, and the Sambuca is not really very expensive because you can buy some off brands of Sambuca that are very inexpensive, and since we only use it to make those dishes for the most part, and only rarely, okay, as an after dinner drink, it too turns out to be not very expensive. So yes, I usually use a dry white wine with it. I've been known to use some sherry with it, though, sometimes. It can be very good with sherry too. Rick Maynard says, good night to all. Time for me to do the dishes. Wife is not feeling well, not feeling good. We usually divide and conquer. The cook does not do the dishes. Yeah, Bonnie usually does our dishes. Avril says, you're very welcome, lovebirds. And Dolores says, good night, Richard. And Deborah says, sounds good. And Kay says, if anyone has a watch party, invite me. No one on my friends list would participate except you guys anyway. Well, if we can get maybe Stephanie, Dolores, and Sandy to come to the watch party together, okay, and they will help us to share it out, we might be able to get real good attendance at the watch party. Oh, and Lana also, of course. Okay. Okay, Deborah says, hashtag hands off Venezuela. Okay, she says, I love these discussions. Love Joe, Bonnie, and all of you. Kay says, you can grow your own saffron.
Yes.
Well, tell us how, Kay, and we will try to grow our own saffron, and maybe we'll be able to get it for less than that $37, $38 an ounce. Boy, 1 ounce lasts a long time. A long time.
You can grow the flowers that have the saffron things in it.
Right, but the problem is those are fall blooming crocuses, so you have to wait till the fall. And maybe there's time this fall to grow some, I don't know. Okay, so saffron comes from a fall blooming crocus. We've heard that saffron is being actually produced here in the United States now.
Yeah.
We've been getting Spanish saffron.
And some schools are teaching kids how to grow it.
Bonnie says schools are teaching kids how to grow it. Carmen says, I didn't know crocus blooms in the autumn. Alvaro says, wow, you two are quite the gourmets. Yummy.
Not me.
Well, but over the years, we've learned how to make a few dishes very well. I wouldn't say that we're, the way I cook, I usually make something that doesn't take that long to begin with and then lasts for a few days. And that's the secret. Okay. And
but you keep adding to it over those few days.
Yeah, Bonnie says, I keep on adding to it. Yes, I do. In other words, we have to do that because we're largely on a vegan diet for the most part and a non-dairy diet as well. Well, of course, if it's vegan, it's also non-dairy. And so to maintain that, if I start off with a basic dish and we have to eat it for 3 or 4 days and we don't want to get bored with it, I have to do variations on that dish each day. Like, maybe add
Brussels sprouts.
Some asparagus to it second day, or some Brussels sprouts, or some red beans, or garbanzos, or I mix it up with a lot, of different things. It changes the taste, and so even if we have a basic dish for 3 or 4 days, we don't get bored with it. Okay, says, yes, they do. If I remember right, I was going to plant some in my old yard, but never got a chance as I lost the house. Okay, says, check out the Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company. They do great heirlooms of all kinds. They probably have it. Thank you, Kay. Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company. Well, good night, everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you for staying. I had a real good time. I hope you did too. I will be back with Short Takes on Monday, and I will be back for a full live stream on Tuesday, and of course on Wednesday, and then have another Q&A on Thursday, and maybe I'll have another Q&A on Thursday. I might decide to shift the Q&As to Saturday, because that also gives you more time to see the Short Takes. So I'm thinking about that. So I may take this opportunity to do that. But I'll wait for some feedbacks from you. You can give me some feedback on Facebook and tell me if you think that's a good idea or not. I mean, this was the first time I've done that. So the question is whether I should continue it or not. Can you guys grow, can you grow herbivore made lemon zest rice noodles last night? It turned out so good, and I ate the rest for breakfast, so I get what you're saying. Got to make food stretch. Yeah, got to make food stretch, right. Try not to throw it out, especially if you're mainly doing vegan. Yeah. So you made lemon zest rice noodles. I've never tried that. That turns out to be really good. Kay says, night all. Love you all. I will love you too, Kay. You take care. Everybody else take care. I'm going to end it now. Okay.